Sweet. Looks like we're live. Hopefully, everyone can hear me. My mic has been acting funny. My computer's been slow. I upgraded my Wi Fi just so I could go live tonight. Um, so it's good to be live. It's been a while since we've actually had a stream. And I'm really excited about this game. I think this is a really good one to have a live stream for. I was really just doing this because it's been a while since we had one. But Rudy Gay came back. I think there's some good things to talk about from this game. Obviously, it was a great one for the Jazz. We have some sort of a winning streak going. So let's go. And Nate, I I guess Nate and I had some confusion about who had this game. I beat him to it. I'm not mad about it because it's a fun game. Rudy Gay went crazy, so um, sorry for the confusion. But Nate, I guess you get a night off. um, Sweet. Let's jump into it. I talked about I talked about Rudy Gay. He came out. He had 18 minutes, scored 20 points. I think he had 5 rebounds. We'll go more into that later, but that was way better than I could have hoped for a Rudy Gay return game. That was huge for him. He looked pretty smooth. Um, this was an interesting game, and I'll dig more into it. But the Jazz, they looked, even though they had 24 turnovers, I'll talk about that. But they looked comfortable. They looked like when Rudy Gay was on the floor, things kind of worked out. The Raptors were they kind of had an aggressive defense, and that's probably where some of the turnovers came from. But the Jazz were able to capitalize a lot of those situations, especially later in the game, which has kind of pushed the lead so that the Jazz won by 16 points. Because for a lot of this game, it was a pretty close game, closer than it should have been at halftime. But the Jazz pulled out with a pretty big victory. Uh, and as a team, uh, uh, the team, I mean, the play that I think really summarizes how the ball movement was going is the Rudy Gobert behind the back pass play, which you don't expect to see. But like I was seeing a lot more ball movement from the Jazz this game than we've seen in the past, uh, and a lot of assists, 34 assists tonight. I think last game they had high 20s, like 27 or something like that. So like I like that ball movement as long as we don't have 24 turnovers every game. So those are some highlights that I saw. I'll dig into some of these things a little bit deeper. I'll start with the team stats, go into the box score, talk about that a little bit more, and then you guys just leave any comments, any questions. I have a poll going. Do you think Rudy Gobert will get 6 Man of the Year votes? Um, I think it's possible. I if I were to bet on it, I wouldn't bet on it right now. If I were a betting man, I wouldn't bet on it right now. But um, if he keeps playing like this, he's going to even with the late return. If he's coming off the bench averaging 20 and 5, then I think he has to at least get votes. So leave any questions, comments. I'll hop in the chat in a little bit, but let me go over some of the stats real quick from the game. Um, and yeah, and we'll just go until the chat runs out. Um, so the Jazz, here's one thing that we're seeing a lot, and I've been talking about this more, is that the Jazz, like at the beginning of the season they weren't shooting well. They've been shooting better recently, but they've been giving a lot of possessions up to other teams. So like for example, tonight the Raptors shot 14 more shots than the Jazz. They just made 5 less. So if that's how you win, that's fine. It's it's very uncomfortable, and I don't know if that's going to work in the playoffs when you're playing good teams game in game out. The name of the game comes down to, like, especially when it's two good teams who are playing good defense, who are in rhythm on offense. It comes down to who has more possessions, and if it's close enough there, then it comes down to other factors. But you can't give up 14 extra shots to another team in the playoffs. So that's a concerning thing. The good news, though, is the Jazz shot 55% from the field. They shot 41% from three. They shot 92% from the free throw line. So when you're shooting that good, you can get away with some stuff like that. Rebounds, same. This is part of the issue. The Jazz are consistently out rebounding their opponents, but they aren't getting as many. They're usually either tied up or giving more offensive rebounds, which is like It's like additional turnovers essentially. Um, so the Jazz had 36 defensive rebounds and 10 offensive, which is okay, but they let the Raptors have 14 offensive rebounds. So that's something the Jazz need to work on, something to keep an eye on for that. That being said, the defensive rebounds, that shows that one, the Jazz have great rebounders, and two, the Jazz are playing great defense because even though their opponents are shooting more shots, the Jazz are forcing tough shots, forcing misses. So that's a good sign. The whole defensive rebound, like it's interesting when your defense is good enough, you can allow the other team to have so many extra shots. Um, but like I said, it's not ideal. That if we can keep up the level of play on defense and keep the shooting splits, and then still kind of narrow the gap between the number of shots, that would be ideal. Jumping down to assists, I mentioned this. This was I I don't know exactly, but I'm pretty sure this was a season high for assists for the Jazz. If someone wants to fact check me on that, go ahead. But 34 assists is great. I was talking about how they have a like from the eye test. The stats don't back this up 100%, but from the eye test, they looked a lot more comfortable passing the ball, going two or three extra passes to get a better shot. Um, and they were getting a lot of good inside shots that were leaving Rudy Gobert. This is going to be tough all season. Rudy Gay and Rudy Gobert, um, but they were leaving Rudy Gobert, Hassan Whiteside open down in the paint, um, and they were finding them. They weren't settling for threes if they had a better shot down low. So I really like seeing that. I think the assist number shows that. Um, and then it comes to turnovers. I won't go over steals and blocks. I've I don't know. We can have the conversation. I don't love those as statistics. They are, um, I don't know. I feel like they're more. If this makes any sense, I feel like they're more of a subjective stat than an objective stat, because I feel like they impact the game in a way that you can't really measure. It's the hype stat, but it's like a block. Some blocks are super valuable. Some you block it and the other team gets the ball right back and they score right after it. So uh, I think a block is more of a morale stat, and then a steal, it's also like a varying degree where some steals lead straight to a bucket, some you steal it and it leads to a turnover. So maybe that's just me being too judgy on those stats, but I think there's too much weight put on them on defense. I guess is what I'm trying to get at. And I think the Jazz could still be the one of the best defensive teams in the league, even if they had some of the lowest steals and block stats. So I don't put too much weight on them, except for I talk about them way too much about how I don't think they're good as far as predicting team success. Total turnovers, though, I brought this up. So here, this game specifically, I've been talking about Jazz turnovers for since the beginning of last season. This game specifically, though, it's really interesting, and talking about how some stats are more valuable than others, some turnovers are more valuable than others. It's not all a money ball thing where extra possession having this many extra possessions means you win the game. I think that's a good stat to look at, but it's not like getting on base in baseball. But if you look at it, the Jazz had 24 turnovers, which is way too many. I think like I don't like seeing them in the mid-teens for that. So mid-20s is way too high for me. But the stat that kind of shows how important these turnovers were is the points off of turnovers. The Jazz allowed 13 points off of their 24 turnovers, which is really good. That's a little bit over 1 point per turnover. And the Jazz forced 13 turnovers but got 37 points back from that. So that's like a three like 3 points from every turnover that they got with the from the Raptors. So that seems a little bit ridiculous. Like I'm almost wondering if I'm reading the stat wrong, but that's a really interesting thing to think about how the Jazz may be turning the ball over, but they're getting back on transition defense. And I've been noticing that a little bit, not to this extent. So that's another thing to keep our eye on is if they turn the ball over 30 times but no points come off of those turnovers, it doesn't actually impact the game that much except for just slowing it down a little bit. So that's an interesting thing to think about. I think I spent a lot enough time here. I won't go much more on team stats. Real quick before I hop into the chat, let me go over the box score. I won't unless you want. I'll probably come back to this while we're in the chat, but just a few highlights. I'm not going to talk too much about the Raptors, even though I have two players on my fantasy team from them. Gary Trent Jr. did great. Pascal Siakam did not show up tonight, which really helped the Jazz. But let's talk about the Jazz. The Raptors are the Raptors. Fred VanVleet is ridiculous. So, um, but really a great team effort. Let me count this up. We had seven players in double digit scoring. Donovan Mitchell had 20 points. He did have 6 turnovers, but like I said, they didn't turn to many points. So I don't like that, but that's like if you're going to have a turnover, might as well stop it. Stop the fast break. Royce O'Neal had a decent night with straight shooting, 16 points. Don't expect that from him regularly, but it's nice to see him get in the mid-teens. Rudy Gobert, 14 points, 11 rebounds. Son Whiteside, 11 points. A lot of those inside points that the Raptors were giving them. So didn't have to work a ton for that. That's what I like to see. Clarkson did his thing, 12 points. Ingles, 10 points with a plus 20 off the bench. And then the star of the show tonight, Rudy Gay, 20 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 7 for 8 shooting. He hit 5 threes, which is like Rudy Gay for most of his career, which crazy flashback. I watched him as a rookie when he was in Memphis. So it's kind of interesting to see him now as a Jazz. He's a much different play style, I feel like, because he was not a 3-point shooter back then. But he came in first game, hit 5 threes. That is huge for the Jazz. It's another big forward. He's not super athletic, but he has the strength. He can hit the threes. He can grab the rebounds, and there were a couple times where he did look a little rusty, but if a little rusty is 7 for 8 from the field, I'll take a little rusty. So great night. The Jazz played a deep bench again. It was probably right towards the end, just a couple minutes. I like seeing this. They didn't really do it even in blowouts last season. So I like seeing taking some of that pressure off the starters. No one had more than 30 minutes on the Jazz. So great win overall. I think there's a lot to be excited about. I see the chat. There's a lot of stuff to go over. We'll hop into that. And also, I want to bring this up on the live stream because I think that's the best place to bring it up. You might have noticed in some of our videos, we stopped saying, oh, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we stopped saying YouTube altogether. I can say YouTube here on this live streams because we're really only using the live streams on YouTube, but we post a lot of we post all of our content on Newsbreak, which is an app for local news. And we have pretty good traction there, but they just made a rule that they don't like YouTube, and if we say stuff like subscribe because over there it's follow, it's not subscribe, or if we say stuff about YouTube, then they just don't let our videos show up. So for our pre-recorded stuff, we're going to do that on our live streams. We're YouTube focused, so we'll stick with the YouTube terminology. I don't know if any of you have been noticing that, but I wanted to bring that up. Okay, I'll hop into the chat. And speaking of liking and subscribing, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel if you're a Jazz fan. Like, we're all Jazz content here, so if you love the Jazz, you'll want to be here. Okay, I'll hop into the live chat, and we'll just keep going until it's either much too late or the chat kind of dies down. So, Will Jensen says, could you imagine Clarkson and Ingles playing like last year? Like last year, six man of the year, and then you have Rudy Gay and Whiteside and Pascal on the bench as well. I know it's like the Jazz already had the 2 best bench players in the NBA. That's that I'll say debatable, but according to the 6 man of the year voting, we had the 2 best bench players in the NBA, and then we added Rudy Gay, who could be right there. I wouldn't say Whiteside or Pascal's there, but um, they have both been exceeding expectations. So this like depth is not the issue for the Jazz. I think the issue for the and sorry, I got a swivel chair, so if my this is a way off topic, but it's way better than the like creaky chair I had before. So if I'm accidentally, I'm doing a little bit too much to show it off right now. But if I'm moving back and forth on my mic, just call me out if it's messing with the audio. Um, but yeah, the Jazz have a ridiculously deep bench. They already had a really deep bench, and so depth is definitely not the issue for the Jazz. The issue for the Jazz is being able to adjust, which is what we saw in the Clipper series. But it's not like it's not we're so deep with the same talent anymore. Which like obviously Ingles and Clarkson are way different players, but at the end of the day, they're both like they're both scorers, and then Ingles a decent defender and a decent ball handler. Uh, like so, Rudy Gay brings in the size, and he's not the most athletic guy, but he's more athletic. Brings in some of the athleticism that we were missing. So, I'm hoping to see lots of creative lineups with Rudy Gay this year. And we'll see. Like we saw what he could do, and so let's see how creative he can get with the basketball. I'm really excited to see how this works, and I think it's a great playoff move. Um, Nate says Raptors have a lot of potential, and while the Jazz are the better team, the Raptors are shorthanded and near the end of a long road trip. Yeah, the Raptors are like I feel like they're such an interesting wild card team because obviously they won the championship a few years back. Kawhi Leonard left, but they have a lot of talent. Fred VanVleet is all-star caliber player. Pascal Siakam is most nights he's an all-star caliber player. He didn't really show up tonight, but every all-star has their off nights. They have some good talent. Uh, Dragic is probably going to get traded, so they might bring in some talent there. So I think, and they have a great coach. So Raptors had an off night. They're one of those teams though where even if they have a bad record, they could come in and beat the best team in the league on any given night. Um, so I'm glad it ended up good for the Jazz. That's why I was a little bit worried at halftime when it was as close as it was. I'm not going to add it up, but the Raptors might have been winning by a little bit. I don't remember. Um, because stuff like that happens with the Raptors. The Jazz have had a they haven't gotten off to the hottest start. They got off to a hot start, and then the past few games they kind of stumbled a little bit. So I was worried. They came out with a nice win. Their schedule coming up looks easy-ish. No team in the NBA is easy, but I'm hoping this is the beginnings of a nice long win streak. Um, Weston says, "Gosh, Rudy Gay was so underrated on the Spurs." Um, I think everyone on the Spurs team, like people, just stopped caring because their best play, excuse me, their best player was DeMar DeRozan, and people love hating on DeMar DeRozan because he plays the mid-range game and he's not a great shooter. Um, but DeMar DeRozan's having a great season in Chicago. Rudy Gay had an awesome start to his season tonight. Um, yeah, like I'm really interested to see what Rudy Gay can do on the Jazz because honestly, he's a starting caliber player on a lot of teams. Um, he could start on the Jazz if they want to have the play a lineup with Royce O'Neal coming off the bench. I don't anticipate that happening unless they're resting Royce O'Neal or there's an injury. But I think he's good enough to start for the Jazz. I think that's not his role though, and it's like you don't want to have your starting five be your five best scorers, and then you come out and then the when the bench lineup comes up, no one can score. So that's why people like Jordan Clarkson are coming off the bench, even though they have the talent to start on a lot of teams. And Jordan Clarkson could probably start for the Jazz if it weren't for we kind of have a log jam at the like. Is he going to? He's not going to start over Conley or Mitchell, but he has the talent to start over Royce O'Neal. I'm going down a road that I don't need to go down. I'll just go to the next comment. Um, and Nate says that's crazy to think about. The bench could be crazy if Joe and Jordan got back into peak form. And I'm sure they will. The both Ingles and Clarkson are kind of like I feel like they're kind of streaky. Sometimes they go off for 10, 15, 20 games and they look ridiculous. Other times they're kind of off. Tonight, like Clarkson's one of those players where you can expect 10 to 20 points most nights. And you have like he may have to shoot 30 shots to get there, but he'll get to the he'll get to his point numbers. So hopefully we see some improved efficiency, especially when there are a lot of players who can take shots and be efficient. Hopefully that will. I Clarkson's game is just kind of a high volume game, so I think we kind of have to live with that. But um, we talked about how last year the Jazz bench lineup is better than a lot of well, could beat some teams starting lineups, and that is much more true this year, which is crazy to think about. Um, Weston says, I want to see you want to see me and Nate play one on one. It could be a 500 subscriber special. Um, yeah, Nate and I it's been a long time since Nate and I have played basketball, so you keep bringing it up. We'll talk about doing it if we once we hit a milestone like that. We'll have to figure out whether we want to make a like goal or a subscriber goal that we do that. But I can tell you, you probably don't want to see it. I, I can't speak for Nate, but I can tell you, my basketball skills are nowhere close to where they ever were. So it will be really ugly basketball watching me play. So you may say you want to see it. I don't know if you actually want to see it, but Nate and I we can talk and figure something like that out. Um, Sora says I like the passing. The bench was great. I want Ingles to shoot a bit more. The passing was a ton of fun. The, like it there were times, obviously there were a lot of turnovers, but there were times tonight where like plays where it looked like the like prime San Antonio Spurs where it was just ball movement worked perfectly and they got the best shot that possession. And I like that style of basketball with this team. I think the Jazz are a team that can play that style of basketball. No one's really selfish. No one's thinking I need to get my 20 shots tonight. I don't even think Clarkson's thinking that. I think that's just his play style. And if he was asked to take less shots, he would be a lot less of an effective player. So I think that's what we need to do to get the most out of him. But I don't think he would be upset if that's what he had to do, which is great and which opens up this kind of style of basketball, which I love to see. And if they can hold back the turnovers, I want to see this kind of stuff every game. And Ingles shooting more, yeah, like I'm not too worried about it, especially since he can impact the game in other ways, and there's a lot of other players who can score. But when he's hot, it makes because like when Ingles goes off, you then have to guard him like a superstar, and that opens everything else up for everyone else. Plus, he goes off for 20 plus points. So um, it would be great to see him try to get in those streaks a little bit more often, but I'm not too worried about that. Um, Nate says, "Yeah, been there, done that. Dale dominates me on the court. Um, at least I used to. I'll say that. And one time, Nate killed me in a game of horse. I think, where he shot some like half court shot behind the basket, and it went in or something ridiculous. It's like before an open gym, and we were just messing around, and that got me frustrated. But um, Sawyer says off topic, but Curry is crazy. There have been. Uh, the whole league has been crazy this year. Like everything's been weird, but I think one thing like people uh, aren't like people kind of forgot about how good Steph was. Um, and if he has even just a handful of more seasons like he's having right now, I think there's a lot of people who don't want to say this, but he has to be in the I won't say the GOAT conversation, but he has to be in the like top 10 conversation. It might be a little bit of a stretch right now to say top 5, but he could get there. Like if he goes on a like if he gets a three-peat for the Warriors after everything he did already, having seasons like he's having now, um, uh, I think there's a lot of people who won't want to admit it, but that's kind of the level he'll be at. He's kind of already right there on that level, um, and he's proving it again this season. So he's going crazy right now. Will Jensen says, "Yeah, I still really want to see Quinn experiment with different lineups like small ball. Um, now that Rudy Gay's back, I'm really hoping we start to see that. I think that would be awesome to see. Um, we'll talk more about that as it comes, but or as he plays those lineups, and if he doesn't, I'm sure we'll bring it up. Because I really want to see it. I want him to practice it, even if it means us losing some games this season. Because I think we need to have a small ball option. Because in the playoffs, I can guarantee you, if we play a team who can play small ball, they are going to play small ball because they saw how it worked with the Clippers. And so if we have a counter for that immediately ready, um, that will be huge. That will shut that down, kill all the momentum, and then we should be on like have the upper hand for the series. Um, the story says, "What do you want for Christmas?" I don't know. It's for me. What I've realized is most of the time when I'm thinking about what I want for Christmas now, it's what do I want to budget to buy myself something because it's like when I want something for my birthday and my wife asks like what I want for my birthday, I'm just like, well, I would love a number of these things, but I don't want to pay the money for it, and I know that I'm going to end up paying the money for it, even if she's the one who walks into the store and buys it. So, I don't know. I've started to enjoy the holidays more for um, just kind of like the relaxation and like the traditions and things, which is sounds really lame, and like I'm realizing I'm turning more into an adult, but I don't know. At least for me, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to with this is just kind of the chilling during the holidays. Um, which honestly, I won't with this channel. The Jazz have a lot of games, so I might not get as much relaxing as I normally do during the holidays. Um, but also let us know like if I know around Christmas it's like, especially after Christmas morning for a lot of people, it's just kind of like a chill day. The Jazz are playing on Christmas. The Jazz are playing New Year's Eve, New Year's. There's a couple of games throughout that. Like, um, do you want us to do live streams then? Like, let us know. I think I'm I'm down to do it. I won't speak for Nate, but I like I know that those are kind of chill weeks. So if you want that stuff, like we'll try to get you some more content maybe. Um, but I don't know. We'll figure it out. Will Jensen says, and I want to see him try different players and stuff during different situations. So come playoffs time, we'll have lineups and schemes for any team. 100. You wrote the point. I said it. We're on the exact same page. I couldn't agree more. Um, and the story says, "Am I the only one who's still sad that Clarkson lost his 3-point streak?" Um, Probably not. I don't put too much weight on it. It's fun, but um, I'd much rather like there are other things that matter a lot more. So and actually, let me end this poll. It's kind of bugging me. It's like taking up a good chunk of the chat. Cool. Um, and Nate's response to it: "I'm not sad per se. I just want him to get back to shooting at least 35%. Glad Clarkson shot it better tonight." Um, cool. And Weston Harvey says, "Why the heck did they change the NBA ball to Wilson?" I don't know. I I don't get a change like that unless it's just purely a business. I haven't looked into it. The answer's probably out there, but I don't get changes like that. I can kind of understand if it's just because the NBA doesn't pay for that. The NBA gets paid. Wilson's paying a lot of money to have their ball be the official NBA ball. So that may I get it from the business side, but when you're running a sports league that has a history like the NBA, 75 years, there are some things that you just it may be better for now, but you can't change it kind of to respect the past. It's like um it's like I'm not a huge fan of the NFL adding a game in the season because it's like now season records are all going to be kind of messed up, or it's like the NBA, they're talking about shortening the season. Season records will be all messed up, and fans like the history. They like comparing that's a huge part of the game. So, and I don't know if it's making a huge difference now, but I think it's a like find something that works and stick with it, and then obviously you have to refine the game for different safety things for um like this new rule change where like they made a rule change to protect players because Kawhi Leonard got hurt, and then they had to adjust that rule change because players were so like stuff like that naturally has to happen, and that's going to take the game different directions. But um, you need to have a certain number of constants, like um, and I'm sure a lot of the players are annoyed by it because they got used to one ball, they've been playing with it for so long, and it's feeling almost like you raise the rim by an inch. It may throw off their shot that way. I haven't heard a ton of complaints about it. I've heard a couple players complain, so I don't think it's different enough that it's throwing it off that much. But I agree. I don't like changes like that too much. Um, cool. Well, it's the end of the chat. That was the agreement. I'll keep going until the chat ends. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Great one for the Jazz. 2 games in a row. Rudy Gay was the highlight of tonight, obviously. Um, if you haven't liked the stream, please like it. And I don't know. I kind of want to set up a counter and see how many times Nate and I mix up Rudy Gay and Rudy Gobert because I know it's already happened probably almost 10 times, and tonight was his first game. It happened tonight already once, so uh, that might be an interesting thing to keep track of. But thanks again for joining us. This was a ton of fun. I'll try to do live streams a little bit more often. Not every game, because like I said, these live streams are for YouTube, and we need to get some content on Newsbreak as well. And they don't like us saying the word YouTube, so live streams are when we get all the YouTube stuff out. So um, thanks again for joining us or joining me. Nate's on the chat too, so I can say joining us. Have a good night and go Jazz.